Welcome to News with a View. Today is February 19th, 2026. This is episode 26. 26. Okay. Hosted by me, John A. Costa, an expert on nothing, which gives me the ability to be so clear on what is wrong with everything. And that's a little dig out to Bob in New York. Today's episode is unscripted. It's my first episode from, I think, February 9th. Major pressing issues going on that needed my full attention. But what I am going to talk about today is the Supreme Court seems to be ready to rule on whether or not the president acted under his power to negotiate tariffs. Now, that's normally the job of the Congress. But under certain conditions and emergency actions, the president can immediately intervene, bypass Congress, and declare an emergency and do what he has done. I have said before that I'm a person who lives and breathes the Constitution. And under the executive branch, on the executive powers of the president, under the executive branch, he can do what he has done with tariffs. But the caveat was there had to be an emergency. So, can the president declare an emergency and then evoke his right to renegotiate tariff agreements? I don't think he has that ability to do that without first addressing Congress. There was no act of war. There was no, he's using the invasion, which I do agree. We were invaded from our southern borders. And he's using that precedent to evoke his power to negotiate and disregard tariffs and make his own deals. It's a stretch. If the Supreme Court says he has the ability to declare that, then it's done. He can do it. There's a lot of caveats in there. And when he did that, I said, and if you look back on that show, if you followed me like Bob does in New York, you would remember I said that was a very, very touchy situation. And that was one of my 20%ers that I said, I don't think that's going to clear the robes. Now, what happens if the Supreme Court rules that no, the president in this case did not have the power to declare an emergency like this? That's going to cause a lot of other chain reactions, not only in our trade agreements, because then everything reverts back to where it was. And I don't know if we'd have to make good on some of this stuff, return money, and, it would be extremely, extremely tough to untangle. Did he purposely do it as such, saying that once he did it, it would be almost impossible to stop it? I think the Supreme Court will say, since we have stopped the invasion at our borders and we are implementing steps to deport those people that shouldn't be here, he must at some point say, I'm ending this. These are what's staying in effect, and now handing it back over to Congress. There's got to be some end date. You just can't have that power forever. So that's the problem with doing some things in how this president has looked at the Constitution and acted. And I said I did not agree with everything the president has done. I didn't disagree with everything that Biden did or Obama. I look at the constitutionality. Do they have the power to do it? In this case, as I said, it's very iffy. If they said, yes, this was a true emergency when he stepped into office on the 20th of January, 2025, there was an emergency situation. The borders were unsecured. We were getting all these people in and not knowing. And could he have declared what he had declared? Yes. But there has to be an ending date. And I think that's what they're going to have him do. If they just don't turn around and say, you can't do that. You can't create an emergency so that you could act in a manner as you acted. You just can't declare it. Very tricky. I said that was a tough one because if he has the power to do it, he has the power to do it. If Congress wants to create laws to change how that works, have at it. Let it go through Congress, let it go through the Senate, let it become law, but whatever it takes. Go ahead and do it. But as it stands right now, it's a 50-50. It's a coin toss. It's a coin toss. Personally speaking, as I said before, I don't think he had the power to do it. You have a lot of legal eagles and legal beagles sitting there up on the hill. And I have none of that. None. But I can read. And I can make a somewhat educated opinion. I looked at the intent of all that language, and you can go through there. That's the beauty of the library, of Congress. You could find all that information. It's boring, and I think I might have hurt myself reading a lot about it. But there is information out there to kind of point you in the direction you need to go. So I think this will be a very, very big tell on Friday. I think they're set to release this information as soon as... They like doing this type of stuff on a Friday. The Supreme Court likes making these rulings on a Friday, so that there's big huff and puff, and then by the time Monday comes along, things have settled down a little bit. But I think that if the Supreme Court agrees with the Trump administration that he has the power to do what he did, it's going to make a lot lot of people unhappy. And there have been Republicans that have come out and said, yeah, President Trump, I don't think you can do that. The Supreme Court's going to make that decision, folks. And that's why we have a Supreme Court. And that's how we have a system to go in there and go, no, 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 can't do it. It's the fact of them doing it. And then what do you do when they say, no, you shouldn't have done that? Oh, well, the toothpaste's out of the tube. How do you get it back in? You know, it gets messy. It gets messy. All right, that's been 11 minutes of that. I'm going to do a quick show today. I'm tired. Did a lot of driving in the last 8 days. I'm tired. This fat guy can't do as much driving as he thought he could do. The other issues that are going on, of course, out there is still with ICE. And ICE has now said they're kind of winding up what's going on in Minnesota. And they're going to start pulling back agents from there. What does that mean? We have 1,000 agents there. I'm going to pull back 300. That's reducing it. I have 1,000 agents there. I'm going to pull back 900. I'm reducing it. The states that do not want to use resources in enforcing federal law, I think this is going to be a bigger issue than what people are looking at right now. Because if I go and say I'm not going to use any of my resources, and when they say resources, it's money, it's personnel, in allowing federal law to be administered, then you have to let the federal government in to your state to use their federal authority to exact federal authority on a state. The question comes into being here, folks, is that I'm not so certain that you could say, I'm going to decide what federal laws I'm going to do and what federal laws I'm going to choose to do. And I don't think, well, I know for a fact, a state can't make a law to say, we're not going to allow federal agents into our state. Can't do it. I see, I was in Maryland the other day, and there's some county legislator there that's pushing no ICE allowed in my county. You can't do that. The supremacy clause of the Constitution doesn't allow you to do that. But it does allow you to say, we're not going to have police actively or any state government official, county, town, municipality, city, whatever, aid you in carrying out federal law. Meaning the police still have to provide protection. That they have to do. But you can't call the police up and say, hey, Jose Ramirez lives in that house. Go over there, get him. And when you get him, give us a call and we'll pick him up. They don't have to do that. They do not have to report to ICE that, hey, I stopped Ramirez over here and he's on a, list. Where it gets technical, there's 1.6 million illegals out there that are on a federal warrant list. And if they fail to act on that, if the police, county, or anyone else fails to act on that, they could find themselves in a legal mess because they can't do that. They took a sworn oath to uphold the laws of the United States. And that's one of them. That is one of them. They don't have to use people, but they have to make that arrest then. They have to arrest them and then go, hey, feds, take them. Now, if the feds turn around and go, well, we can't get there to Tuesday, and this is a Wednesday, so they got to wait a whole week, I don't know how long they can hold them for without a federal getting involved with it and moving them into a federal facility other than a county jail. Those are questions, legal questions, that deserve an answer. And I know the answer. I do know the answer. But these are the things that could get thrown out there. I think the Trump administration has been a little heavy-handed on how they're administering it. But if you're not going to get cooperation, and you're telling me I have to then go in and do all that, I get it. This is Big Daddy's job now. But you can't stop Big Daddy. You can't get in my way. You want to step aside and not partake in it? That's fine. You can't stop us. You can't make laws that overstep federal authority. Can't be done. You can try, and you could say, we're going to, and it will go right up to the state Supreme Court, and then right up to the Supreme Court. And the state Supreme Court, we could probably turn around and go, hey, pal, you can't do it. You could make any legislation you want over here, but it's non-enforceable. It's just, you can't do it. The backlash coming from ICE and everything, we knew that was going to be a problem. Everyone knew that was going to be a problem. And you hear the moaning of people, and it's a legitimate moaning. I'm not saying that you should just be quiet and let them do it. No. There's legitimate questions being asked out there. I had people leave me comments about birthright, that it would stop women from voting because they couldn't change their driver's license with, how could they prove then that they're citizens? The sky is falling. The way rulings work in most cases, just put that little caveat out there, is that you go on January 1st, I petition the court to do this. I say that this is, they got it wrong, I got it right. I want an opinion. And that opinion, then they either go, we're going to hear it, we're not going to hear it, and that's it, it stays whatever it is that they're doing, that's it. Or they go, we're going to hear this. And you make briefs and you go to the courts, and this guy gets 3 minutes, you get 3 minutes, whatever it is. And you get to plead your case. And then the Supreme Court, in this case, would take the time to sit there and go, okay, we're going to deliberate on this and we'll get back to you. So 2 years later, they get back to it. And they go, yeah, they got it all wrong. But that's only going to be in effect from either the ruling date or the day the petition was handed into the courts and the court said, we will hear it. So people saying that, women won't be able to go and get their, driver's license or be able to vote is a ridiculous concept. They would have a beginning date, January 20th, 2025. Anyone born after that date, they would have to somehow prove that their parents were citizens here or born here. And if not born here in the United States, they'd have to show citizenship. It's a very tricky point to go because you get married or you go and file for a marriage license, let's say, and they ask for proof of who you are, and you have a birth certificate, but you were born after the date. Now, we're looking into the future. And they go, well, show us your parents' birth certificate. Well, they weren't born here. Oh. When were they made citizens, or when were they given green cards, or when, that can be a problem. And I get that. It's a legitimate, logistical question to be asked, but no one is going to be stopped who is legally allowed to be married in this country and who were born here, of course, before this date of action would happen. Not going to affect them. Come to me 16 years into the future, it could be a problem. How do you address that? You haven't been a citizen here? When they went to school, someone had to then, this is all going to be cascading down. When you go to school, you're going to have to prove citizenship. Or that you're in the system, or you're applying, or, whatever. There's going to be something here, and people are going to be upset. People are going to be upset. And I can understand where people are saying, the 14th Amendment, you're born here, it's not as clear as you think it is. Now, the Supreme Court can go, no, it is as clear as glass what it means. It means you're born here, that's it, you're a citizen. Okay. And that could be the case. And if that is the case, that's what, there is no appeal process to the Supreme Court. That's it. Ruled on, done, over. And you go, but John, what about Roe v. Wade? And my answer would be, what about it? Show me in the Constitution where abortion was mentioned. And I could show you in the Constitution where birthrights are mentioned. So things can get revisited later on. Usually it takes years and years and years to do. Every once in a while, the court does reverse itself in a little bit quicker time frame, but it's a slow process, and the chances of that happening is very slim, but it does happen. There has been instances many times where the courts have said another Supreme Court got it wrong. And that's why they're called opinions. That's the way that goes. So there's going to be a lot of questions on that coming up too. A lot with Epstein. Epstein. That was my third thing for the day. I'm going to make this quick. It's not going to help the Democrats. Because this all coming out this far from an election, it's still far. The idea that there's stuff in there that, if Trump was trying to hide it, he would have hid it. If there was stuff on Trump in there, somehow it would have gotten released under Biden or even Obama, or somehow Hillary Clinton would have gotten that out the door. We know about some of the big players. Now they're going after the little players. I mean, even Whoopi Goldberg has been mentioned in papers coming out of Epstein. Now, Whoopi has addressed that on her show, The View, and said she had asked for a free airplane ride, like to Monaco or something, and could Epstein maybe find someone that could get me in their private jet and get me over there. And it wasn't Whoopi that reached out to Epstein, it was her handlers. But she must have been told, hey, listen, we reached out to blah, 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 Jeffrey Epstein, blah, 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 blah. And Epstein turned her down and said, no, I'm sorry, can't help you here. And that was the end of it. So we're being told. And, she came out and said, I wasn't a girlfriend. I certainly wasn't working there. I was way too old, But some of the information coming out, the government had for years. For years. And whether or not they were held up by agreements, I don't know how that works. And that was Attorney General of Florida, Pam Bundy, who didn't write off on that because this was a federal matter when Epstein was arrested, because those were federal charges. State was there, but federal were the ones that really pressed the charges. And there were all agreements made and deals cut. Now, at the time, 2011, Obama was the president, and under his administration and Department of Justice, certain deals were made. That's the way it worked. Did they tell Obama about the deal? I have no idea. I have no idea. Did they ever tell Clinton about deals or anything like that? Don't know. They can ask them, and they've asked Bill Clinton to come and speak, and he's declined, and now, there's big to do about that. So, because then you understand, we get this guy to say, hey, but, Obama knew. Well, get Obama in here. And they might even turn around and say, well, Trump knew in 2016 till he was, lost the election. He knew. Get him in here. And they can do that. Though I don't know if they can do that to a sitting president. But when they're done, they can. So, not sure how that works in what's going on here. And right now it's a civil matter, of course. In England, they have arrested the Duke and for, official misconduct while in office. Yeah. That's so that the government is not held liable for his actions while he was on the island. And Garufi made the accusations, and she's dead. Yet her accusations live on. And, there are emails saying that was consensual. But now they're saying, well, we're not worried about the consensuality of it. We'll take your word on it unless the court tells us otherwise. But you told Epstein about trade secrets and trade negotiations while you were the ambassador of trade? Care to tell us about that? Now, of course, British law is different than our laws, and they'll have to work that out. But if it's not going to be, we're doing this so we can get elected. The Democrats will try to do that, but it won't hold water because none of this will matter. It's not going to change the price of eggs and not going to change the price of gas. And that's all that the Trump administration just has to keep pounding on. This has been a witch hunt. You had people saying that, President Bush, President First Bush, was eating babies. I mean, just crazy stuff. And, you have other people saying that even though 1 million or 5 million pieces of information have been released, that's only 2% of what they have. So you have 160 million other pages. I mean, how many people were watching Epstein, if that's the case? And not only that, if you have 3 million pieces of information that the federal government is holding, how many people were watching him? You've had to have a whole department just watching him. It's mind-boggling on how much information that they had, and they acted on or didn't act on, or couldn't act on. Certainly couldn't release a lot of it if there were active investigations going on. By all means, they couldn't release this information. And now that they have the Congress and making it they have to release it. All right, bang. But it's going to compromise other cases. I'm sure of it. Who could get a fair trial by their peers? Who? And you can say, well, they'll have a bench trial. No, you're entitled to a jury trial. Put them up there. Can you find anyone that, hasn't heard a million stories about this or can be unattached to it? It'd be very difficult to have happen. And I realize in 99% of these cases right now, it's civil litigation. A little bit easier to get your point across without evidence. But a civil case can turn criminal very easily. Very, very easily. I think that the Democrats trying to use this as a foothold in seats or anything like that, not going to work. I think the corruption is going to sink the Democrats. And I think all the GOP needs to do is just keep focusing on the corruption. That money was stolen out of your pockets and went to our enemies overseas with this guy and this guy and this guy knowing what was going on. And if they screamed they didn't know, well, they should have. You weren't doing your job then. That's all the GOP needs to do. Just keep pounding away at the message that they stole money that could have paid for grandma's drugs, that could have used to help with a funeral arrangement for, someone on Social Security. But instead it was buying guns for Somalians. That's all they need to do. And they go, yeah, what happened on Epstein Island in 2011, yeah, terrible. Terrible. What he was doing in 2009 was terrible. Didn't he go to jail for that? And you're telling me Clinton didn't know that he went to jail for any of that? Bill Gates didn't know what was going on there. They went to the island. All these other people that visited the island on vacation, and that has to go for Republicans too. But I think that if the Republicans stay on, they stole from every American, Democrat, Republican, progressive, liberal, non-political person who pays taxes. That money was stolen from all of us. And how could this have happened? Where was this guy who was in charge there? Where was this guy? Who reported and no one did anything about it? They turned a blind eye to it. These are what's going to get people unelected. Right there. It's not going to be stuff that happened in 2009. Those people are basically gone. There's only a handful of those people left. And Trump has been examined. I'm sure Bill Clinton has been examined. They've all been examined and looked at. It's going to be the donors who went to that island and then gave to the Democrats or gave to the Republicans. Those are the people that are going to be called out and scrutinized. And most of Hollywood had interactions with Epstein because he was a procurer. He put people together. He found funding. Now you're hearing out he stole money and he had money laundering and all this, and no one did anything. And why? Because he was connected. And of course he was a CIA asset. Of course he was a Mossad asset. Of course he was an MI6 asset. He was probably part of the Chinese security state assets and Russian security state assets and South American security assets. He went to the highest bidder. And they knew what they were dealing with. It's like, you hold a scorpion and it bites you and you go, how could this have happened? The scorpion looks at you and goes, you knew I was a scorpion. I told you I'd bite you. And yet you picked me up. All right. With that, I'm going to finish up for the day. This is going to go 40 minutes, a little bit longer than I wanted to. I'm going to make a quick little edit, and out the door it goes. Please, if you haven't joined yet, please join my podcast, join my channel. Like it, hate it, leave a comment. I'd love to know anyone that listens to this show, where are you listening from? Just leave a comment. You don't even have to say you like it, you hate it, you're an idiot, hey, you're spot on. Oh, hey, you made sense with this. Whatever. I'd like to know where people are listening to me or watching me. It'd be interesting. Leave a comment. All right. Please give to a charity if you can. I understand charities, you could have your problems with it, but think about it. A food bank, a local food bank, always needs help. Forget about who they're helping or whatever. Hungry children are hungry children. A cold adult and hungry adult is still a hungry human being. Give food. They could always use a monetary donation so they could get immediate help as they see fit. Say a prayer. Prayer works no matter what a Democrat might tell you. And with that, I thank you, and I'll catch you later on tomorrow's show. Tomorrow will be Friday, right? Today's Thursday, Friday. So it'll be interesting. I'm waiting for the Supreme Court to make its decision. I'm like this on the tariffs. I said before, I did not think the president could declare an emergency just so he can invoke his power. Seems like putting the cart before the horse. All right, later. Thank you. Bye. As I fade to black.